But nobody gets mad at Barsby for throwing ancient Innova discs. They think it's cool because it's part of his character. It's part of Barsby. It's part of him being like an OG disc golfer. But yet you got these Discmania guys who are just getting all the hate.
There's 3 keys to disc golf: driving, approaching, and putting. You need all 3 to do this disc sport.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we kind of got a different style video for you. Just going to be sitting down talking about not what's in my bag, but what's in the Discmania Pros bags. And not necessarily just them, but last week or earlier this week probably when I post this, Casey White released his in the bag. And there's some controversy throughout the year or the last couple of years with Discmania Pros in the bags. And I edit Casey's videos, so his in the bag, I put it together. And after it got posted, pretty much right away, there were some comments. And I think anyone who follows disc golf closely is familiar with these comments. The comments being, man, all Discmania Pros basically just throw Innova. Why don't they just go to Innova? And I understand that at the surface, you know, now that Discmania makes their own Frisbees, or at least has a different company than Innova making their Frisbees, I see the argument for them, you know, maybe not allowing their sponsored pros to continue to throw the Innova made discs, especially since a lot of the Innova pros nowadays are bagging old Discmania discs and kind of, you know, now they're calling them like, okay, the Innova made Discmania PD or whatever it may be. But I wanted to kind of share my opinion on this topic, and I think it's one that I haven't actually really heard. I don't think I've heard anybody kind of put it this way. Basically, I kind of view these old Innova molds as more of just different runs of discs rather than being discs that are made by a different manufacturer, let alone a competing manufacturer. So you got pros like Gannon. He's throwing this, you know, first run PD, same like Simon through the first run PD, and it's their most popular disc. And yes, Discmania currently makes their own Discmania reinvented PD, and it's a very similar mold. Obviously, it's not going to be exact because I don't necessarily think that would be legal in terms of PDGA guidelines or whatever the PDGA approving system is, but it's close. So a lot of people are going to be like, well, why don't they just throw the new PDs, okay? And I'm going to bring up another point later on, but I want to elaborate a little bit more on what I mean by I view discs in this circumstance maybe a little bit more as just a specific run. And to break that down a little bit more, you could kind of view the PD, the first run PD, as just a run of PD that will never be made again because it was the first run PD. Now, is that really any different than throwing the newly made Discmania PD first run, and now going forward that disc will never be made again? It's still going to be available, it's still going to be on the market, but it will never be made again. And you can look at other companies like Prodigy where it kind of is a similar thing, but it's different because they're still being made by Prodigy. But you got Kevin Jones when he was on Prodigy, he threw his red D2. It was like his famous distance driver, and that red D2 made 10 years ago will never be made again. So people could complain maybe that, hey, oh, why is Kevin Jones' favorite driver a driver that was made 10 years ago and, you know, isn't available to the public anymore? And I know that that argument is made with Prodigy sometimes, that, hey, the pros are throwing stuff that, you know, maybe doesn't have the flashing. You know, Gannon was all over the collectors pages trying to find these certain runs of D1s. And I think it's kind of the same thing with Discmania, is that I understand that the molds have changed. But I think when you view it as just the fact that it's just a different run of that disc. An Innova Destroyer from 2009 is a completely different disc than an Innova Destroyer made yesterday. You know, that's going to go hit the market in the next month. It's a completely different disc. Look at a player like Greg Barsby. Greg Barsby, up until a couple years ago, where he started bagging Shrikes, probably because he's just plain and simple getting older and needs some flippier distance drivers. He has the Tour Series Charger. You know, Barsby's been, and I'm a big fan of Barsby, so I've watched all of his in the bags. So I guess the reason I bring this up is I'm not like well versed in his bag, but I know what Barsby throws. And Barsby's a guy who collects old discs. He likes to throw the old Innova stuff. And you could argue that, Barsby throwing literally a disc I have right here, a first run Millennium Scorpius. You could argue that him loving this disc as like his favorite forehand distance driver doesn't make sense because it's not available anymore. Yes, they're still out on the market. You can get them, but this first run Scorpius will never be made again. And that's the same way that I see, Casey. The reason I brought this all up is because he's still throwing, an Innova made MD5, Innova made FD3. He's throwing Innova made DD3s or Cloudbreakers. I'm not too well versed on when the DD3 and Cloudbreaker mold became a different mold. I don't really know like all that behind it, but people are basically getting mad at him for, throwing these old Innova molds. But I really think when you look at it as, okay, he's throwing Innova made Cloudbreakers. That's no different than just throwing a different run of Cloudbreaker. And now there's maybe 4 or 5 Discmania made Cloudbreaker runs. And just because he's throwing one that was made by a different company, but still is Discmania discs, I don't think it matters. It's just a different run. It's no different. Back to Barsby, the guy throws all these Eagles that were made 20 years ago. He's throwing CE Eagles, like this one. That disc will never be made again. There will never be Innova Eagles that are as good as the CE Eagles. I guarantee it, because Innova just puts out pretty bad Eagles. So Barsby, he's throwing CE Eagles, PFN Star Firebirds, all this old stuff that you could argue like, hey, why is he throwing that? But nobody gets mad at Barsby for throwing ancient Innova discs. They think it's cool because it's part of his character. It's part of Barsby. It's part of him being like an OG disc golfer. But yet you got these Discmania guys who are just getting all the hate, like Gannon when he switched over, that, oh, it's all Innova made. Who cares? It's Discmania discs, just in an earlier run. That's how I feel like you guys should maybe start looking at it, because people are getting pissed off for no reason. It just like doesn't really make sense to me. And then there brings like a second kind of topic I wanted to bring up, is like the nostalgia around the beginnings of disc golf and the OG days of disc golf. And I think that's a big reason that a player maybe like Greg Barsby throws all this old stuff, is because that's what he grew up playing with, and it has this nostalgic feeling that he trusts and that he like feels good with. And everyone knows, disc golf's like maybe one of the only sports where if you came up to me and you said, hey Brad, hey, like, what's in your bag right now? You got all these discs in your bag. I'll trade you exactly every disc you have in your bag, but brand new. Would you take it? And I'd say no. And I think majority of disc golfers would answer that question the same way. They'd say, no, I want these ones that I've been throwing and beating in. Disc golf's one of those sports where like old equipment is better than new equipment. And yes, it's kind of weird. And I kind of understand where people are coming from when they look at a player like Gannon, maybe because it's his first year on the team. And what does he do? He goes and sources all the old stuff that he's been told is good from, Eagle and Simon and all the OG players, or just, everyone in disc golf. You'd have to not pay attention to disc golf at all to not at least hear about like, oh, these special, first run FDs, these first run PDs, these old PD2s, like all this type of stuff, because disc golfers like to talk. They like to talk about plastic. They like to talk about their favorite discs. And so Gannon being new, I kind of see the argument where you could be like, hey, why didn't you just go get yourself a big batch of all the new stuff and just work that stuff into the bag? But that's just not how the game works, And that's just, I don't think it's really going to change unless Discmania just goes, hey guys, contracts from now out. You say Gannon, did he get a 3-year deal maybe? In 3 years, they're like, hey Gannon, sorry man, but out with the old, in with the new, and that's it. Maybe they'll do it eventually, but I think those are just a couple points that I kind of wanted to bring up, that I think people just don't, they see this Discmania issue because it's like a direct competitor now, and they're like, and it's a different situation than when Prodigy first started now, because Discmania does have like a full lineup. But when Prodigy first started, you know, Ricky's throwing Prodigy stamped Firebirds. They're all throwing, you know, a couple Prodigy molds, but for the most part, they're just throwing Innova discs stamped with Prodigy. Same with a lot of, you know, like Legacy players. When Legacy first started, they're really not on the scene right now. I don't think there's a single top pro sponsored by them at all. But back in the day, you had a lot of Legacy players. While their molds were still getting built, they were throwing probably Innova, maybe some Discraft, and just stamping them with Legacy, you know. And that's just, I think, part of this sport. And up until recently with the Discmania switch, I think people just start getting mad at it. You know, you don't get mad at people for throwing a Berg that was made by Castoplast, whatever, 8 years ago, even though now they're made by whoever makes all the trilogy stuff. So Castoplast New School is made by a different manufacturer than it was made for originally. But you're not seeing people being like, oh, why is you know, this player only throwing old Bergs? They should throw the new ones because that's what's available on the market. You know, I think it's a thing that is just kind of overplayed. And you know, I just saw Casey uploaded this video, and Casey loves discs. I think Casey kind of falls into the same category as Barsby a little bit, where he's very nostalgic. He has a connection with these Frisbees, and that's why he loves them so much. He's not the type of player who can just be like, oh, okay, yeah, I'll take all the old stuff that I love that I've been throwing for the last 6 years out of my bag and put in all the new stuff. He's just not like that. I'm not either. You couldn't pay me. You maybe could, but this Star Firebird, it's not coming out of the bag until it shatters. You know what I mean? Like, there's just discs like that aren't going to come out of the bag unless they absolutely like have to for some reason. But then again, you got Casey, who is probably the biggest pusher of two of Discmania's new molds, being the DD1 and the FD1. And he bags probably a total of 6 of them. 6 discs in his bag are these 2 molds that Discmania came out with that are hands down, without a doubt, the 2 best new Discmania molds, the DD1 and the FD1. They nailed those molds, hit them out of the park. The Horizon DD1s, these things are absolutely insane. And there's a good reason why Casey chooses to push the DD1 so much, because it's an amazing disc. You know, and there's gonna be tons of other players out there like Kale LaVisca. He's been throwing the same M4 for like 8+ years now. If you see him throw that hyzer flip to flat, like turnover, it's a blue one. He's been throwing that one for like 8 years. The M4 mold that he throws is different than the current M4 mold. Go feel a brand new M4. It's not the same, not even close. An old M4 feels exactly like this Buzz SS. A new M4 feels like shit. I don't know. I'll be completely honest. But before I ramble on too much about this topic, I just wanted to come like sit down, and I don't know, I was just reading Casey's comments, and I'm like, people can't just enjoy a video about a guy who loves Frisbees so much without picking them apart because it's not new Discmania. You know, and I think if you just look at it that way, we're from a nostalgia factor and from a standpoint that's just the fact of, like, it's just a different run, you know? Like, the PD to PD, like, I'm bagging a, where is it? A Last Howl. If you look at a Last Howl PD and a first run PD, they're damn near the same thing. Give anybody, like, close your eyes, blindfold them, give them an Innova made PD and a Discmania made PD. It's going to be pretty hard to tell the difference, other than maybe the tooling. You can't feel the tooling. But that's pretty much what I wanted to talk about today, guys. I think if you look at it that way, maybe from a different standpoint, and maybe if you made it this far, you're not one of the people who really cares. But it's just different runs of discs, and people are going to like different runs of discs, you know? It's just part of this game. Nostalgia is so built into this game. And you know, Discraft is really like the only company I feel like you see a lot of players who are like bagging like brand new stock stuff. That's like really the only company, it seems like. But then you got players like Adam Hammis, who the Z Forces that he bags, those like red ones, you could look at that kind of the same way. Those old pop top stiff Z Forces will never be made again, ever. AB with the big Z Lunas, that exact Luna will like never be made again. So you could get mad at AB for for bagging a Luna that is impossible to find, costs $200, maybe more, and will never be made again. But you don't. You just fanboy over him throwing that disc. And I love AB. I love that he throws that disc better than like anyone throws anything. It's insane. But that's part of the game, guys. So that's my spiel for today. If you're looking to get a new disc golf bag, head over to Squatch Disc Golf. Use code Broderick. You can save yourself $20 on any non-signature bag. So thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you in the next one.
Creator of Frisbee Club, motherfuckers.
The man, the myth.
And right here, I have a frisbee bag. It holds all my frisbees, the ones I like.